but abandoning his children to wolves.
And Kennedy argues the bar is doing his job by keeping parts of the Mueller report away from Congress. The committee plans to vote Wednesday on whether to hold Barr in contempt of Congress unless he releases the entire unredacted report.
After the department failed to meet a 9 a.m. deadline for the full report, a spokesperson for the Justice Department says the Attorney General has taken extraordinary steps to provide some lawmakers with a less redacted version of the report, working in good faith with the committee.
Fox's Jared Halpern on Capitol Hill. Meantime, the Justice Department moved its meeting up with the committee. Plans to meet Tuesday instead of Wednesday. A strong message from the Treasury Secretary to Congress. It's one word: no. Steven Mnuchin says he won't turn over President Trump's tax returns, a move that will likely send the dispute to the courts. And accused cop killers behind bars. Police in Mississippi arrested Darian Tawan Atkinson Monday evening, one day after the shooting.
These officers have spent, some of them have been up for 38, 40, 44 hours. We thought it fitting for them to be here and see the arrest that they worked so hard to try to effect.
Biloxi Police Chief John Miller. And the newly announced anchor of CBS Evening News will reportedly make millions less than her former colleague, Gayle King, on the morning news. The New York Post reports that Nora O'Donnell will get between $7 and $8 million a year. King just negotiated an $11 million a year salary to stay at CBS this morning. And this is Fox News.
Let's see now. Fast, easy, affordable. That's the best way to describe my home loan at Bank Pacific. Fast, because we give quick decisions. Easy, because we've cut back on the paperwork. Affordable, because today's home loan rates are still so low. So see us today to refinance or consolidate, or to buy or build your new home and save yourself some money.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
President Trump vows to impose a new round of tariffs on Chinese imports.
A day after the president threatened to increase tariffs on $200 billion in Chinese goods at the end of this week, the president tweeting, "The United States has been losing for many years $600 to $800 billion a year on trade. With China, we lose $500 billion. Sorry, we're not going to be doing that anymore." Despite the tough rhetoric, China's trade representatives will come to Washington this week for a final round of trade talks. If the president follows through with his threat, it would lead to higher prices on imported Chinese goods, forcing Americans to pay more for everything from computers to clothing. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
And the tariffs are set to go into effect first thing Friday morning. Stock markets in China holding steady today after Beijing said its trade negotiators would be in Washington on Thursday. U.S. stocks plunged early Monday on that news of more tariffs and that may be imposed, but they recovered with modest losses. The Dow down 66 points. On the ice, one team punches its ticket for the conference finals while another one forces a Game 7. All that in the Stanley Cup playoff action.
The Boston Bruins back in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Krejci unable to step by DeBrusque, but then Krejci and then across to Krug with a man breaking. Backus, he scores!
Emmerich there on NBC Sports Network. David Backus with the tip-in goal as the Bruins blank the Columbus Blue Jackets 3-0 to win their series 4-2 and head to the finals in the East for the first time since 2013. They'll take on the Carolina Hurricanes next. The San Jose Sharks and Colorado Avalanche are headed to Game 7 in their series thanks to Gabriel Landeskog's OT lamplighter in the Avs' 4-3 Game 6 win over the Sharks. Game 7 on Wednesday. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Two-for-one dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. Two-for-one dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Tell that to Cory Booker. One of the, how many people are running for the Democrat nomination for President of the United States right now? I'd have to get out my calculator to figure it all out. More than 20, I think. Well, one of them is Cory Booker, and Cory Booker has spoken out a little bit about firearms, and I'm going to read something from that column called Bearing Arms. Tom Knighton. Here's what he says today. Senator Cory Booker, in a desperate attempt to stay relevant as he slips farther and farther down in the polls, unveiled a rather ambitious gun control proposal Monday to prove to Democrat voters that he, not Representative Swalwell, I don't know how Swalwell thinks he could ever get elected to anything with a name like Swalwell. You know, he ought to join the trend, is change his name to Mueller like other people that have awkward sounding name. Maybe I'll change my name to Mueller. That's easier to pronounce and certainly a lot easier to spell than Klitzkie. Anyhow, this guy, Cory Booker is more anti-gun even than Representative Swalwell. The 16-point plan, which Booker is touting as, quote, the most sweeping gun violence prevention proposal ever proposed by a presidential candidate, contains all of the Democrats' favorite talking points: closing gun sale loopholes, banning, quote, assault weapons, and high-capacity magazines, and limiting bulk purchases of firearms. How many times have we heard that list? But there is one idea that's earning much more attention than the rest: requiring gun owners to obtain a federal firearms license. Federal, you know, a federal firearms license. You need a license to drive a car. You should need one to own a gun, Booker tweeted. The 2020 Democrat compared the process to applying for or renewing a passport. Those who already own or are looking to own a firearm would be required to go to a local office. So what, we'll have the gun license office now, a federal gun license office in every city, village, and town? Go to a local office and submit the necessary materials, including proof they completed a safety course and fingerprints. The FBI would then review these materials and run a background check. You know, kind of like what they do now when someone tries to legally purchase a firearm from a federally licensed firearm dealer. If approved, the individual would receive a license that would be good for up to 5 years. According to Gifford's Law Center, 10 states already require a license to purchase. Another 3 require a license to own. And we know that 1 territory requires a license to own or buy. The very territory of Guam. If you even so much as pick up a firearm and you don't have a firearms ID, you in a heap of trouble, boy. Booker claims his overall plan is simple. Well, there's something simple here. I don't think it's Booker's plan. I think maybe it's just Booker. Let's come up with some really draconian gun control and throw it up against the wall and see if any of it sticks, because my campaign ain't going anywhere anyhow, he's probably saying to himself. But what Second Amendment supporters really see when they're reading Booker's proposal is, quote, we will make it harder for you, a law-abiding citizen, to get a firearm while having a minimal effect on stopping those intent on causing harm from carrying out their plans, close quote. Yeah, well, regular listeners here know already the part that really causes my red light to start blinking here when you start talking about a national license to do anything. A national license to own a single shot 22 rifle. It's not a matter of what used to be called federal law, but we don't use that term on Tall Tales. It's not a matter of national law. We have a Second Amendment. Let me read that Second Amendment again, although I got it pretty well down pat. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the constitutional law scholars that listen to this show know that the first 10 amendments were protected, as you were enacted, to protect the people of the United States from their government. So the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, were negative rights, not positive rights, like if you're really hungry, we'll give you food stamps, or free medical care, or Medicare for all, or something. Those are so-called positive rights. The negative rights are the kind of rights where the Constitution tells you what's not going to happen to you, what the government's not going to do to you. And the impact of the Second Amendment was that the national government is not going to take your firearms away from you. So what business does the national government have in then requiring a license issued by the national government for you to own a pistol or a firearm that the Second Amendment protects? I'll give you the answer there. None at all. But, of course, you can't expect a member of the United States Senate to know anything at all about the Constitution. Once upon a time, that was kind of important. But nowadays, especially on the left-hand side of the aisle, it's not about what the Constitution will protect. It's the reverse of what John Kennedy said on his inauguration day. Ask not what you could do for your country. Ask what your country can do for you. So the left side of the aisle has taken the Bill of Rights and turned it into, or attempted to turn it into, a bill of wants. These are the things I really want. I don't have them. It's up to the government to provide them to me. Anyhow, getting back to Cory Booker and his idea, it's not a national government function to get into the regulation of firearms. Thanks to Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia, who wrote the majority decision in a case called District of Columbia versus Heller, we know that Second Amendment not only applies, not D.C. versus Heller, but McDonald versus Chicago. We know that Second Amendment now not only applies to the national government, but also to state governments. Due to another attack on our federal system that developed something called the selective incorporation of the Bill of Rights into the 14th Amendment. In any case, the right to keep a firearm in your house for personal protection is, according to Mr. Justice Scalia, constitutionally compelled. So where does Cory Booker get off with the idea that we should have a license? Well, you need a license to drive a car. Why shouldn't you have a license to own a gun? Yeah, the logic is inescapable. Now, looking at it from another standpoint, we have probably as a restrictive a gun control law here as you'll find anywhere. And we know that you've got to have a firearms ID in order to be able to buy or own a firearm. It's been a while since I've been through this process. I still have a firearms ID. They told me if you're over 60, your fingerprints are no good. But before that, when I went to apply for my firearms ID, I had to submit a fingerprint card to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I wonder why they would want that. Which not too long ago was perhaps not all that onerous, because up until perhaps 20 years ago, fingerprints really weren't that helpful for solving crimes. In other words, if you found somebody's fingerprint, you could not take that fingerprint and find out who that fingerprint belonged to. You could take that fingerprint and compare it to other fingerprints and identify the owner of the fingerprint that way. But in the last 20 years or so, modern science has developed something called AFIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System. So now, once your fingerprints are in the system, people who find your fingerprint anywhere can trace that fingerprint back to you if you're in the system, like if you had to turn in your fingerprint card to get a firearm. We talk a little bit about privacy from time to time, but there is no more privacy in the United States. Given the digitalization of everything, your chances of maintaining any kind of personal privacy are somewhere between slim and none. The only safe haven that I can think of would be in an executive session of the CCU. And that's kind of like a forbidden zone, that nothing that interferes with privacy is permitted inside that privacy protection zone. So anyhow, this is Cory Booker's idea. Of course, we are not going to be able to cast a ballot for president that counts in 2020. And I mentioned the other day, I kind of lament that, because there's somebody I'd like to vote for president, but there's so many I would like to vote against. So I guess the best I could do is get out my checkbook once in a while and cut a check to somebody that I like, and then write a nasty note to somebody that I don't like, or tell the truth about him on Tall Tales. That'll get him. So, Cory Booker, you are far from anything close to the coveted Tall Tales endorsement for any public office. Okay, so much for that. From there, we go to the real Joe Cruz, but he's answering the phone right now, so I'm going to... Next item on the card here is Zemi Ikotny, which we refer to as Meet the Press. And I thought maybe I'd take that phone call, but must have been Jimmy who just wanted to whisper in your ear, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Actually, it was another caller talking about the cone of silence. They used to use it in Get Smart, that TV show back in the day.
I remember Get Smart, yeah.
Yeah, in the office they had what they called the cone of silence, and it came down from the ceiling and it covered them, and nobody could hear them outside of it. For secret stuff.
Yeah, maybe we should have something like that for Tall Tales, huh? Okay, so we go from there to Zemi Ikotny, and I got an awful lot to do. Have you ever had a situation where you had something that you really wanted to be able to grab when you need it, so you put it in a special place where you wouldn't lose it? Have you ever done that? And then forget where that special place was? Yeah, well, that's what I did yesterday. So I've got my plagiarism material right here. I found it. So I'm going to go through the regular workup on the PDN for Zemi Ikotny, and then before I get to the post, I'm going to go through this material that I should have gone through yesterday. I guess the only thing I can just say is my bad. But I don't know about the Daily News. I know they charge $1 a piece for the hard copy, and the Post is only 75 cents. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Sometimes the old saying is you get what you pay for, but it's not, I don't think you get much of anything when you pay $1 for the Daily News, as I will now demonstrate. Well, I've got the editorial, what ran as the editorial today in the Daily News. I'll give them this. It's not an editorial from USA Today. All right, good going, Daily News. Yeah, that will get the oohs and ahs out of the peanut gallery. But this is what it is. It's a cartoon, yeah. It's a column by Oliver Thomas, a retired Baptist minister and a member of USA Today's Board of Contributors. So it's not a USA Today editorial. It's one step even removed from that. It's a guest writer. Once again, I have to wonder, are the editorial writers at the Daily News on strike? Are they all on sick leave? Are they out to lunch on a permanent banquet circuit? Is the only guy that comes to work down there the one that runs the copy and paste machine? Excuse me, I said guy. The only person. Yeah, are they the only person? Yeah. So ordinarily I would just take this and toss it in the shucks can and say, Jesus, they did it again, and go to the Post. But I think I have to get into this one a little bit. For one reason, it is an element of the agenda of a particular part of the far left progressive agenda, and also it's a puff piece for one of the candidates, for one of the Democrat candidates for president. I won't tell you who it is right now. We'll get to it, but I'll tell you who it's not. It's not Cory Booker. Even USA Today won't touch Cory Booker. Okay, this is what it's called. Now I'm going to go through this, and I have to give you a little background along the way, and I'll tell you why I think Oliver Thomas is in the wrong game, and then I'll also tell you why I think this editorial is not only a sign of laziness, but it's a sign of tone deafness. The folks down at the editorial boardroom at the Daily News apparently don't know who their audience is, and I'll explain that a little later, so just kind of bear with me here. Okay, the title of this piece by Oliver Thomas is Churches Must Admit LGBTQ Misguidance. A sad thing is happening in America. The church is killing itself. A great revelation has occurred that is bringing joy and happiness to millions, but it is being met with resistance and retrenchment from many of my colleagues inside the church. So there's a revelation that's bringing joy and happiness to millions. The revelation, here it is that LGBTQ people are just like the rest of us, only LGBTQ. They are not perverts, nor are they abnormal, as the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Experts once declared them to be. People don't choose their sexual orientation any more than they choose their race or their gender. Now I'm really confused. People don't choose their gender? Now, I keep running in, whenever the word transgender comes up, I keep running into the exact opposite theory, that just because little Johnny was born with male plumbing doesn't mean that's his gender. He may decide when he's 15 years old that really his gender is, they may decide. It's so hard. It's very hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right? They may decide when they're 15 that they really identify as females. But that's not what Oliver Thomas says here. He says, people don't choose their sexual orientation any more than they choose their race or gender. This is what lay behind a recent comment by Mayor Pete. This guy really ought to change his name to Mueller. Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana. Indiana, I've told you before, Real Joe Cruz, that I've been to a lot of exotic countries. I've been to India. I've been to Indonesia. I've been to Indiana.
Wow.
Yeah, the one is more exotic than the rest. And the most exotic of all is Indianapolis, Indiana. Yeah. So Pete Buttigieg is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And he said Mike Pence's quarrel, if he has one, is not with the mayor. Your quarrel, sir, said the openly gay Democrat presidential candidate. Openly gay. I think we have an openly gay public official here, don't we, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor, sir.
The Lieutenant Governor.
Yes.
I think he's the first openly gay Lieutenant Governor in the U.S., isn't he?
Maybe the second or third, if I read right. Somewhere before there was another one.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, these things are really important, and I suspect that this is the reason that, this is the really important thing to when you go to the polls, right? Okay, so anyhow, this is what Buttigieg said. You're referring to Mike Pence. Your quarrel, sir, said the openly gay Democrat presidential candidate, is with my creator. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, of course, this is USA Today. Creator is small c. It's not capitalized. So, being the super technical reader that any Reformed English teacher is, that prompts me to ask the question, who or what was your creator, Mr. Mayor? If it were a capital C, then I'd kind of know what you were hinting at. Of course, it's hard to see when a person is talking. It's hard to see whether, when he uses the word creator, if it has a capital C or a small c. But I'm willing to use every inference against him here, because to me, that's kind of an insensitive statement. But we don't get too scared by insensitive statements here on Tall Tales, so I'll let it go. The opinion piece goes on to say, the United Methodists, one of America's most beloved denominations, most beloved. Oh, Tell me about Methodists, Real Joe Cruz.
I had no idea, sir.
You had no idea
No.
that they were one of the most beloved?
Now I know.
Oh, I thought when I asked you to tell me about Methodists, you just gush all over your microphone.
No.
Oh, the Methodists, they're such one. No, you didn't do that. Okay. The United Methodists, one of America's most beloved denominations, are doubling down on their opposition to gay clergy and gay marriage by threatening expulsion to congregations that don't toe the line. The threat is particularly ominous given that the denomination, rather than the local congregations that pay for them, hold title to the church buildings. Now, we're kind of familiar with that that storyline too, aren't we? We're saying that our churches and our parishes own title to those buildings, even though it's perhaps not legal title, that the diocese owns bare legal title, but equitable title is in the churches and schools, etc. Okay, going on. Here's the corner we have painted ourselves into. The Bible says it. I believe it. That settles it. The Bible says it. Yet the Hebrew and Christian scriptures did not float down from heaven perfect and without error. Now, this is going to be an example of the straw man fallacy, and I'll expose it in a minute. They were written by men, and those men made mistakes. A few of the more obvious ones include the sources of inspiration for the census taken during the reign of King David. 2 Samuel attributes it to God, while Chronicles attributes it to Satan. The date of the crucifixion, the book of John says it was on Passover, but the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke say it was a day earlier. And the date of Abraham's pilgrimage from Mesopotamia to Canaan. The book of Genesis says it was before the death of his father, Terah. But Acts says it was after. Okay, now let's just stop and talk a second about what we call the Bible. I should have brought one with me. The Bible is a collection of oral traditions passed down from before the time of Christ. That would be the Old Testament. And after the time of Christ, that would be the New Testament. Folks didn't have word processors back in those days. So much of what was passed down were things that people memorized and passed down from mouth to ear over the eons. There was no book called the Bible until 400 years after the birth of Christ. Now, the word Bible is the English translation of the Latin word biblio. And guess what it means? Book.
Oh.
So one who is a bibliophile is somebody who likes books. And I'll come back to bibliophobes right after this short break.
If you're driving, chances are you'll need gas soon. And by the growl in your tummy, a trip to the grocery store too. But don't just buy gas and groceries without getting double miles. Instead, apply for the new United credit card from First Hawaiian Bank and start earning double miles towards your next trip. Gas, groceries, getaway. With the new United credit card, apply at FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank, member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
How many times have you heard someone say that the key to success is a positive mindset? Some folks go on autopilot and their eyes glaze over at the mere mention of mindset. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I might have an angle on it that'll change how you see things.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So a bibliophile would be one who really likes books. A bibliophobe would be one who doesn't like books. I think in the digital age of the 21st century, bibliophiles are harder and harder to find, unless we would count reading from your Kindle on your iPad. Then it would still count. So in summary, the Bible is a collection of oral stories, folk tales, parables, predictions, sermons, letters, you name it, most of which were passed down by oral tradition and were finally accumulated in something called a Bible 400 years after the birth of Christ. Now, there's a lot to find in the Bible, and I'm glad to say that I read it every week. There's a lot there, and I wish that I knew a whole lot more about it, because it is a great depository of, if nothing else, history. But because of the diversity, which, I should get 5 points just for using the D word, right? Anytime you can work diversity into your conversation, that means you're really a good guy, And if you can top it with, our strength is our diversity, you get 25 points. But given the diversity of the sources of the Bible, its text, its subject matter, on and on, there's an awful lot that you could learn from looking at the Bible, from reading the Bible, from studying the Bible. And many folks have spent an entire lifetime studying the Bible. But because of its encyclopedic nature and the diversity of writers, subject matters, not to mention translators, the Bible wasn't written in English. And every time you translate from one language to another, you get some of the translator inserted into the text of what's being translated. You can't avoid that. But given all those things, an astute searcher can probably find a biblical reference to support almost any proposition. And when that happens, oftentimes it's demurrable, which is a lawyer's way of saying, well, even if what you say is true, even if the facts as you state them are correct, so what? It's not a decision. It's not a very good way to make decisions. Now, I don't want anybody out there saying, hey, Tall Tales doesn't believe in the Bible. Well, I believe that there is a Bible, and I've given my explanation of what I think it's all about, and I think it's very valuable. But I would be very leery of anyone who would advance a portion of I would be very leery of someone who says, the Bible says, I believe it, that settles it. Okay, so going back to the editorial, the Hebrew and Christian scriptures did not float down from heaven perfect and without error. Really? Wow. And this guy is a retired Baptist minister. Wow, he must have gone to school for a long time to learn that. They were written by men, and those men made mistakes. The most difficult challenges arise when the teachings of Scripture are contradicted by reason and experience. And that's where you get down to what separates the left from the right. That folks on the right think that there are some principles that are eternal and immutable. And what we need to do is understand those things and build our societies in light of what those principles are, trying to maximize their good effect and attempting to minimize the mischief of those immutable facts and principles. One of which is this: The strongest urge in that mammalian species that we call Homo sapiens, that means them, Real Joe Cruz. I would have said men and women, but I know I shouldn't say that. Self-preservation. You don't need to teach somebody that he ought to, preserve his own life. And right up there, just about as strong, is propagation of the race. In other words, having children so that humankind will continue. That's the way we're hardwired. That's the way we've always been. I was about to say, and that's the way we'll always be. But in light of this, I'm not so sure. Maybe not. Maybe this phenomenon here, this great revelation. Let's see. The revelation is that I wish we could find a faster way of saying that. Maybe I'll just say L.Q or L-Q. The revelation is that L-Q are just like the rest of us, only L-Q. Well, the whole L-Q thing is a self-limiting phenomenon. But propagation of the race is one of the strongest of human urges. And because of that urge, recognition of that, societies have built ways to channel it and then sometimes curb it. Now, I give you Paul Santos Mofnis Jr. when I'm talking about curbing it. It's something that is built into humans, but humans have free will, and they have the ability to not do the kinds of things that Paul Santos Mofnis Jr. was accused of. So others will come along. Those on the left will say, yeah, those things at one time, that was pretty good stuff, but now we're so much smarter. And we know so much more, and we've had so much experience, so we could just kind of junk some of those old rules, like thou shalt not kill, honor thy father and mother, don't bear false witness against your neighbor, because our experience now is so much greater that we don't have to do that. And that is kind of the fundamental difference between the left and the right. So when you hear somebody say, why do you feel that way about this L-Q thing? This is Bill Gates was quoted. Bill Gates, why did you adopt that position on L-Q? He said, because it's 2013. A shorthand way of saying, now we know so much more than we ever did before, that we could junk those old-fashioned ideas about propagation of the race and et cetera. If I could reference the Bible for just a second, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, so once Pastor Oliver Thomas says that reason actually tells us that reason and experience can trump teachings of Scripture. He goes on to build a false equivalence. Slavery is the best, or perhaps the worst example. In hindsight, we can see the obvious. Quote, love your neighbor as yourself does not leave room for the enslavement of others. But Southerners had Scripture on their side. Well, false equivalence and straw man. And again, let's say that I agree with the facts that he states that. So Southerners, what's that got to do with me? Well, I guess I'm a little bit guilty there because I grew up in southern Wisconsin, right? Folks in northern Wisconsin had a totally different attitude toward slavery, no doubt. And then he goes on to say, civil war between southern Christians came to grips with the fact that blacks were not it took a bloody civil war before southern Christians came to grips with the fact that blacks were not inferior to whites. It's a shorthand rendition of a complicated story, but I'll just, once again, I'll just demur, and I'll assume arguendo that what he's saying is correct. It doesn't change his basic premise. The time has come for Christians to take a deep breath and ask themselves, what does loving my neighbor and my enemy as myself look like? I don't disagree with that at all. Okay, now this is what that spat is all about. I've got an article here from the New York Times. This has been pretty hot national news. And the title of the New York Times article is United Methodists Tighten Ban on Same-Sex Marriage and Gay Clergy. The United Methodist Church on Tuesday, goes back to February, voted to strengthen its ban on gay and lesbian clergy and same-sex marriages, a decision that could split the nation's second largest Protestant church. After 3 days of intense debate at a conference in St. Louis, the vote by church officials and lay members from around the world doubled down on current church policy, which states that, quote, the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. The vote served as a rejection of a push by progressive members and leaders to open the church to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. And remember, this is the New York Times. Now a divide in the United Methodist Church, which has 12 million members worldwide, appears to be imminent. It's time for another movement, said Reverend Mike Slaughter, pastor emeritus of Ginghamsburg Church in Ohio, said in a phone interview from the floor of the conference. We don't even know what that is yet, but it's something new. The decision passed in a 53% to 47% vote. It's the latest eruption in the fight over the future of American Christianity and over those whose views of human sexuality are enshrined as Christians. Conservatives have left the Episcopal Church over gay rights. Presbyterians have split, and many young evangelicals are leaving their churches over the lack of inclusion of LGBT people. Now, I wonder what they mean by inclusion. My sense is this. Protestant churches will accept anyone for membership. Now, that doesn't mean that they will accept anyone to be a pastor in their church. And it doesn't mean that they will accept two men at the altar for marriage. But, of course, the skillful journalist here can kind of blend those all together so that the adoption, the church's failure to adopt the idea that two men can marry one another, or that someone who is attracted to the same sex can be a pastor, they would see that as a lack of inclusion of L-PT people. I don't think it necessarily follows. But this is the New York Times. The 7 million members of the United Methodist Church in the United States often do not fit within easy political categories. Second only to the Southern Baptist Convention in size, the church includes high-profile figures with a range of political beliefs, from Hillary Clinton, boy, talk about inclusive, to Jeff Sessions, the Republican former Attorney General. Is better known as Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. He is a Southerner. Just over half the Methodists say they are Republican, compared with 35% who say they're Democrats. The majority of adherents believe abortion should be legal, and more than half favor a stricter regulations to protect the environment. But the issue of gay rights has proved uniquely divisive in the church, and Tuesday's vote reflected the growing clout of Methodists from outside the United States. The tightening of enforcement of church law was backed by a coalition of members from, guess where? African nations. About 30% of the church's members are now from African nations, which typically have conservative Christian views. In the United States, the vote poses a significant risk for a denomination that struggles to attract young people. United Methodists have one of the oldest religious populations in the country, with a median age of 57. Well, no wonder they can't get this L-T thing straight. They're too old. Old dogs and new tricks.
Get a Coke 12-pack for only $3.49 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a dozen extra-large eggs for only 49 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a case of Circle K water for only $2.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
You came to celebrate something for Mom, and it turns into a family reunion. Mom deserves a night off from cooking, and what you found is a moment worth savoring. Create more moments to savor with Mom for Mother's Day at Chili's. Mom can choose from the ancho salmon or the classic sirloin and complete it with a beverage and the Paradise Pie, chocolate chip, walnut, and coconut layered bar topped with vanilla ice cream and drizzled with hot fudge and caramel. There are a million reasons to Chili's. Make this one be about Mom. Chili's, savor the moment.
Okay, so I think I can wrap this up before the big halftime show, and I'll go from there to the plagiarism of the Daily News. The one more paragraph here from the New York Times. The new rules would tighten enforcement and increase punishment for violations. For instance, clergy who officiate at same-sex weddings could receive a minimum 1-year unpaid suspension, and a second offense could result in removal from the clergy. Some items in the plan need to be reviewed by the Methodist Judicial Council. Okay, so this is what the editorial is about. It's about a spat in the Methodist Church over whether or not Herman can marry Henry, and whether either one of them, having entered into that relationship, could be eligible to be a pastor in the Methodist Church. And the National Governing Convention of the Methodist Church says no to both questions. And there's some internal squabbling about that. You can see Oliver Thomas, who, by the way, is a retired American Baptist minister, not a Methodist minister. He's chimed in, and to me it's pretty easy to see where the New York Times comes down on this, but after all, the New York Times is the New York Times. So here's my quarrel with this. The first quarrel is this. You know, how about writing editorials about Guam down there, guys, at the Daily News? Certainly there's enough going on Guam or not going on Guam to come up with an editorial at least 5 days a week that addresses local concerns. It's probably a whole lot easier just to copy and paste something from Gannett. They crank out all kinds of stuff. So if you must do it, do you have any idea of who it is that you're writing for? You run this, which I would have to say is this editorial by Oliver Thomas is extremely pro-homosexual agenda. That's all it is. There's no two sides to it or anything like that. So that, you know, that if you want to be, the implication is if you want to be a good Christian, you must support 2 men getting married or 2 women getting married. And you must support someone who is attracted to a member of the same sex to be a pastor in your church. This comes on the heels of a tremendous scandal in the religion that probably 80% of the people on Guam adhere to. I'm talking about the Catholic religion. Now, the Catholic religion has its own doctrine of this sort of thing. It is a free country. Papers, people, pastors, whatever, can opine about whatever it is that they want to. But to come out with an editorial like this one, you know, when we've had 12, I believe it's 12 priests, 3 archbishops who have been accused of the heinous crime of sexually molesting young boys, one of whom was our Archbishop, Anthony Apparon, who was found guilty by the Vatican to run this. To me, looks very much like a journalistic thumbing of the nose by the editorial board at the Daily News. I think this is the last thing that people who have had to undergo this scandal in the Czech Catholic Church are going to, how do I want to say this, are going to see the wisdom in causing us, you know, to delve into the politics of a Protestant church, into doctrines that are now anathema. Going back to Oliver Thomas's column here, the most difficult challenges arise when the teachings of Scripture are contradicted by reason and experience. Well, have we had any experience here on Guam? Is there some reason that we might think that people who are attracted to members of the same sex wouldn't make good priests, given our experience? Is there some reason to think that the message that's sent by allowing 2 men to get married, to enter into something that our laws now refer to as marriage, or the same thing with 2 women, I can't come up with a better phrase than tone deaf. Daily News, maybe you ought to spend some time reading the articles in your own paper, because you've got a couple of reporters there that covered this whole scandal to a fare-thee well and really laid it out, and then you still come out with something like this. Or maybe I just don't understand the internal politics of Gannett. Maybe Gannett sends these things out and says, you will run this on your editorial page on Monday. But an extremely poor decision. Pacific Daily News. Okay. Guess what? I don't think the Daily News is going to get the Blue Star today. I'm going to come back after the break and we'll talk a little bit about plagiarism in the Daily News.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Spared because he's president. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. More than 450 former federal prosecutors signed a statement saying that President Trump would have been charged with obstruction of justice were he not president. Those prosecutors worked for Democratic and Republican administrations.
They cite attempts to fire the special counsel by the president. Also, what they say is the president creating false evidence and witness tampering and intimidation. Now, the Attorney General, William Barr, did determine, along with the Deputy Attorney General, that the evidence in the Mueller report was insufficient to find that the president did commit obstruction of justice.
Fox's Rich Edson at the White House, and the House wants Special Counsel Robert Mueller to testify next week. Congress won't get a look at President Trump's tax returns, at least not without a legal fight.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says the administration won't turn over years' worth of President Trump's tax returns to the House Ways and Means Committee. In a letter to committee chairman Richard Neal, Mnuchin says the request lacks a legitimate legislative purpose, and the IRS is not authorized to disclose the requested tax information. Neal has cited a federal law that states the IRS shall furnish returns of any taxpayer to the chairs of tax-writing committees, such as Ways and Means. Democrats could now move to a legal battle, either issuing a subpoena to the IRS or filing a lawsuit. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Stocks in China up a fraction today after Beijing said that Vice Premier Liu Hong will be in Washington Thursday as China tries to avert another round of U.S. tariffs from taking effect on Friday. Dow futures are down 41 points at this hour, suggesting a drop at the open. And threats of a trade war sent stocks into a tailspin on Monday. The Dow clawed back from a nearly 500-point drop to close down 66 points. This is Fox News.
I'm Edward James Olmos, here to remind you that the second Saturday in May is the annual Letter Carrier Food Drive. The need for food assistance remains high in communities across America, but you can help. Simply leave a bag of non-perishable food near your mailbox on the second Saturday in May, and your letter carriers will do the rest. All food collected stays within your local community. So on the second Saturday in May, please join me and the National Association of Letter Carriers and stamp out hunger.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll.
Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Violence escalates between Israel and Gaza.
For Muslims worldwide, the peaceful Ramadan celebration is underway along the Israeli border with Gaza. The violence escalated. Israeli Defense Forces say over the weekend, Hamas fired some 690 rockets at Israeli civilians, killing at least 3 and wounding 100. There is compelling video of Israel's Iron Dome intercepting what IDF says are 240 of those rockets. And in retaliation, Israeli airstrikes targeted 350 Hamas targets, killing dozens of Palestinians. There is now a ceasefire, but history shows it will likely be ephemeral. Democratic leadership, including House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer and Judiciary Chair Gerald Nadler, condemned Hamas and defended Israel. Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, the first Muslim women elected to Congress, had different perspectives.
Fox's Trace Gallagher says this is the deadliest fighting between the two sides in 5 years. The Trump administration's reportedly weighing changes to the way poverty is measured in the U.S. Bloomberg reports it's a move that may threaten eligibility for social welfare programs like Medicaid and food stamps. First marijuana, now mushrooms. Denver may become the first U.S. city to decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms.
The city of Denver votes for mayor today and on a measure that would begin the process of decriminalizing psilocybin, magic mushrooms, which supporters say can serve medical purposes and is safer than pot and alcohol.
Nobody deserves to go to jail for something that has a therapeutic benefit.
Kevin Matthews with the group Decriminalize Denver. Psychedelic mushrooms can send users into an altered state for hours.
Fox's Jeff Manasso. Critics say legalizing magic mushrooms on top of marijuana will make Denver a drug haven. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our Business Basic, Essential, or Value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
I don't know how it happens, Real Joe Cruz, but that halftime show gets better every day.
There's only one way to explain it, sir. Pure magic.
I guess so, yeah. It just gets better and better every day. Okay, so I'm going to go back to yesterday's editorial as though I hadn't examined it yesterday. And, of course, I didn't because, once again, it was a USA Today editorial. But consider this. Here's how yesterday's editorial began. This justice system has a terrible flaw, one exposed by special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The American people can't learn whether the president has committed a crime. This must be corrected if the country uncovers a potential lawbreaker in the Oval Office and is faced with a choice of contemplating impeachment. And this is what USA Today this is USA Today from last week. The nation's justice system has a terrible flaw, one exposed by special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The American people cannot learn whether the president has committed a crime. Going forward, this must be corrected if the country uncovers a potential lawbreaker in the Oval Office and is faced with the wrenching, divisive, and painful choice of contemplating impeachment. Do you notice a similarity there? Okay, now on the column that ran yesterday, it says at the bottom, USA Today. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Saturday's editorial that ran in the Daily News. Here it goes. This justice system has a terrible flaw, one exposed by special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The American people can't learn whether the president has committed a crime. This must be corrected if the country uncovers a potential lawbreaker in the Oval Office and is faced with the choice of contemplating impeachment. So USA Today runs it first. Daily News picks it up and runs it on Saturday, thereby plagiarizing something that ran in USA Today. Then the Daily News runs an editorial yesterday that starts out with almost identical wording to their own editorial from Saturday. So they're plagiarizing their own stuff. You can't make this stuff up. if you have a chance, just take out the newspapers and compare them. On Saturday, let's see, a couple of other comparisons here. The punchline from Saturday and yesterday. Had Mueller felt that he had the freedom to say Trump committed a crime, Congress and the American people might now know better what to do next. And from Saturday's editorial, had Mueller felt he had the freedom to say Trump committed a crime, Congress and the American people might now know what to do next. I think I know what to do next. Cancel my subscription to the Daily News. Let me see who I got here in line. It's probably somebody from, it's the real Tom. How many Toms do we have?
I think there's about maybe 8 or 9 undocumented
Toms, huh? Okay, real Tom, how are you doing?
All right, this is from Uncle Tom's Cabin.
All right, Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Anyway, help me to understand what is going on in the little pea brain of the Democrats. Whatever happened to the presumption of innocence? They are saying that Trump must have committed some kind of crime. Otherwise, he would not have been a president. He must have committed a crime, so that's the intent of them hiring the special counsel, Mueller, however you want to pronounce it. That was their intent, that they hired the special counsel to find that crime that Trump must have committed. Otherwise, he would not have won the election if he did not commit some kind of crime. And they hired the special counsel to find that crime. But the special counsel that they hired did not find any. They did not find any collusion, did not find any obstruction of justice. I wonder if our Democrats would have fired Mueller, or it's already over, they can't fire him, but I mean, what do you think will happen if they hire 10 more special counsel?
Well, if they hire 10
special counsel, they still did not find any evidence of collusion or obstruction. Do you think the Democrats will ever be satisfied?
No, because the Democrats still can't get over the idea that they lost the election in 2016. And they never will get over that. And they're going to keep playing these same cards over and over again, if for no other reason to give themselves a good excuse for not having won. You know, we were the best. We got the most votes. They just stole the election from us, Tom.
Even Hillary is still saying that if it weren't for the Russians helping Trump, he would not have won. So Hillary is suggesting if the Russians are helping the Republicans to win an election, so let we the Democrats, let's approach China and let China help us. Maybe we will win an election.
Well, Tom, if you're waiting for me to come to Hillary's defense, the program's over at 6 o'clock. I don't think I'll be able to work it into my routine.
I just don't understand what's going on. I'm also going to cancel my subscription to the PDN. I'm going to go to the Daily Post because it's starting to seem like, starting to look like PDN is also a Trump hater.
That's when they do run this stuff from USA Today. It almost always has that patina, doesn't it? That maybe that's the reason they like them. Maybe that USA Today can run better anti-Trump stuff, can write better anti-Trump stuff than they can do it locally.
You know, I don't know how those voters that voted that pencil neck into the House of Representatives, the Southern California people that voted him into office, I don't know what district that was.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what they're feeling now with that they elected somebody just for the purpose of trying to find a way to knock Trump down.
Yeah, that's Senator Adam Schiff,
Yeah.
And that seems to be the only thing he's concerned about, doesn't it, Tom?
Yeah. It seems like ever since he got into office, that was his main goal. He doesn't care to serve the people that voted him into office. His main purpose, he said, forget about the people that voted for me. I'm going to try to find a way to knock Trump down, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob, for letting me vent.
Okay, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You are now the real Tom, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, I got it, thanks. And let's see, I got another call here. This is Francis. Good afternoon, Francis.
How you doing there, Unc?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
All righty then. I think it's, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, all this issue with the President Trump and the Democrats, I think it's like the economic thing where it's called, I don't know, a derivative where they're trying to create something out of nothing.
Good analogy, Francis, yeah.
Anyway, while we're at it, I'm hearing something that we're in the warpath with Iran.
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah.
And our boys are threatened, and so we got the big ships down there. Last one, I wanted to ask you something. I heard something, a rumor about a Taiwanese gentleman. I don't know if you've dug deep. I might have to dig deeper because I'm hearing something. I don't know if it might be a lie, but somebody was saying something about a Taiwanese guy running for U.S. president. Have you heard anything, any rumors about that?
I know there is a gentleman with a Chinese surname running for president. That's about all I know about him. I don't think he has a very good chance.
Yeah, and he's promising everybody he's going to give lots of money, even to the promising the FSM states and a few island people, nations, and I don't know what's going on, but we're digging right now. We're trying to dig deeper to see we get the boys to give us more information,
Sure.
So anyway, that was all. I think it's a derivative. I think it's just a creation of something out of nothing, So
yeah,
I'm really worried more about that Iran thing.
Elizabeth Warren is the one who's really sort of beating the drum for impeachment. Perhaps I should say beating the tom-tom for impeachment. And her approach seems to be that if she rubs two sticks together, she'll be able to come up with an impeachment.
Here you go. Right now, I guess she's one stick in a bucket right now. Anyway, we're listening. Let you carry on finish up with your editorial and a few more.
Okay. Good talking to you, Francis.
Likewise.
Okay, so I've got another Tom. I guess the word tom-tom just popped into my head here. Okay.
I laughed out loud, Bob. That was a good one. Okay. I think that's my official name is Another Tom.
Another Tom. Yeah, we've got another Joe Cruz.
And another, yes. Anyway, I think I inadvertently misled you without not giving you enough information. I think your answer about a board tenure, a board member whose term expired was right for most boards, but apparently the law is different for Guam Parole Board, and we get to stay in office and on the board until a successor is appointed and confirmed.
Okay.
I don't know why they carved out a completely different standard for the parole board, but I wasn't on island when they did that. So I continue to serve on the parole board until I am replaced and my replacement is confirmed.
Well, congratulations, Tom.
Thanks. But we do have one board member moved away. So I would like to hope that the governor would appoint someone for that term before we leave our board at 4 members. So we're going to try to meet with the governor later this week and talk with her about that.
Who moved away?
Joe Wesley.
Okay.
Mayor Joe Wesley.
A former mayor moved away, huh?
Yeah, I think he was mayor of Santa Rita.
Wow. Okay. Well, once again, congratulations, another Tom. And
well, I didn't mean to mislead you. I just didn't give you quite enough information.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, I look forward.
Next time.
I look forward to a long and fruitful term of service from you on the parole board.
Well, we shall see. I guess it's up to the governor. We serve at the governor's pleasure.
This is a good time to be on the parole board because everybody's paying attention now, and if you think of some changes that ought to be made, probably never be a better time.
We have made some suggestions to that roundtable yesterday. I don't know how much I didn't miss the first part of your program. Sorry, but we actually made several suggestions, and it was a pretty good input from various sources. There's a lot of ideas out there, and I believe the senators were quite impressed, shall we say, that this whole parole business is a little more complicated than they first thought.
Oh, yeah. So here's my idea, Tom, and I've mentioned this on Tall Tales on more than one occasion. I would set up a Department of Probation and Parole that would be separate from the court and separate from DepCorp. And it would handle everything from pretrial release right on down through parole. One of the things that came out in that roundtable is that there isn't much integration between the research that people in the parole office do and what's available to the parole board.
I'm sure you observed that correctly, sir. You have a good eye.
So that would be a way to fix that, and then there'd be economies of scale. You know, if you need psychiatrists, psychologists, etc., it would the more parts you could put together, the more sense it makes to spend money on those kinds of people as opposed to having two separate and unequal departments.
Good, another good observation.
Well, thank you very much, another Tom. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'll be watching your progress on the parole board. Okay.
Well, I think there may be some changes in the wind here, so we shall see. I hope they'll make some changes for the better.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
So long.
Good.
So let's see. How many more? Let's see. We got a couple more Toms that we haven't heard from yet, right?
Yeah, Dr. Poole.
Yeah. Calling all Toms. Calling all Toms. Come in, please. Come in, please. All right, so going back here to this editorial, and I could make comparison after comparison where the Daily News editorial of Saturday is almost identical to the Daily News editorial of Monday. So if that's the way they're going to do it, they should give you a discount on Monday's paper if they're going to run the same content. Oh, okay. Now we're getting to the real high point of the program here. I've got Jimmy on the line. Good afternoon, Jimmy.
Yeah. Thanks. But anyway, I just have a legal question.
Okay. I hope it's not too hard.
I'm sorry?
I hope it's not too hard, Jimmy.
Well, I don't know. It was hard when Athlon did his thing, but I wonder why is he not in jail?
Say again?
Why is ex-Archbishop Apparon not in jail?
Okay, the reason is that the crimes that he allegedly committed were so long ago that the statute of limitations allowing for prosecution has run.
Yeah. And then they changed the law now.
Well, the law has been changed, so there's no more there's no more statute of limitations on criminal sex abuse, but you can't do that retroactively. That's the so-called ex post facto law, Jimmy.
Okay, that's fair enough. But at least they changed it, so let them beware in the future.
Yes, sir.
Hey, you going to hear a Bible joke?
Is it safe, Jimmy?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Who was the stretchiest man in the Bible?
Who was the what?
Stretchiest.
The stretchiest man in the Bible. I give up.
Abraham.
Okay. Why was Abraham the stretchiest man in the Bible?
He tied his ass to the hill and He tied his ass to the tree and walked up the hill.
Jimmy, you told me it was safe.
Well,
I think we're going to have a moratorium on Jimmy jokes here for a while, Jimmy.
Okay, one more.
Oh, Jimmy.
Okay, this is a family joke.
A family joke. All right, go ahead, Jimmy.
The husband and the wife. The husband says, I make all the important decisions in our family. I decide about our country's foreign policy. I decide about our economic sanctions, and I decide about the Fed's interest rates. My wife, I let her make the minor decisions. She just decides where we live and where the kids going to school, who we're going to vote for the village mayor, and what we're going to have for dinner. Just the minor things.
Very good. That's very politically correct nowadays, Jimmy. Some people would think that it's a good thing you mentioned that it's a joke, because there are people today, the feminists, who would say, why do you think that's funny? That's the way things are supposed to be. That's not funny, Jimmy.
Yeah, some people just don't get jokes.
I suppose. Well, I do.
Okay, bye.
Appreciate the call, Jimmy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, that's our Jimmy. So going back here to these editorials, USA Today runs it. Ran about the same thing as copied into the Daily News on Saturday with no attribution at all. It's as though it were manufactured right here in Guam. Then they run almost the same editorial on Monday. They just identify it as USA Today. Don't mention that they ran it before. So I'm going to grade this, and then I'm going to go into the substance for just a moment here. I've got yesterday's editorial, and I gave the blue star to the Post yesterday, but I'm going to retroactively enter a grade on the Daily News editorial for yesterday. And this is a first. I didn't use my blue pencil, I used my red pencil, and I gave the Daily News an F-. Now, anybody out there in our international radio listening audience who is a teacher who could figure out a way that I could give a grade lower than F-, please call in and tell me how to do it, because if anybody deserved it, it's the Daily News. Okay, then I want to talk a little bit about what the USA Today and its local puppet, the Pacific Daily News, is saying about impeachment. Impeachment is not a legal matter, believe it or not. Impeachment is a political matter. That's why it's addressed in the House of Representatives, not in the courts. And if a majority of the members of the House of Representatives agree that a president has committed high crimes or other misdemeanors, they can bring in a vote of impeachment. And there isn't a court in the world that would lift a finger to stop the House of Representatives from doing that. If the grounds for impeachment were Donald Trump has the ugliest hairdo in the Western world, and he constantly displays it in public and on television, he should therefore be impeached. If a majority of the members of the House voted for impeachment, he would be impeached. So when the Daily News, when the USA Today and its local puppet, the Daily News, get all wrapped around their ankle about, it's kind of like Mueller, I guess, must have been listening to us about Sherlock Holmes and the dog, right? Because the USA Today is not criticizing Mueller for what he did. What are they criticizing him for, Real Joe Cruz?
For what he didn't do.
For what he didn't do, yeah. So if the House is going to impeach, it's up to the House. to come up with to do their investigation, to come up with their articles of impeachment, and take it from there. Okay, so it's time to have a remembrance of Jack Haddock, I guess. Each of us will mention something that we remember about Jack Haddock during the seventh inning stretch.
So what's the deal? Are you still paying for the right to have your checking account at your bank? Well, at Bank Pacific, we think it's our privilege, not our right. That's why we offer My Green Free Checking, where your monthly maintenance checking fees are zero. That's zero. And it comes with a free Visa check card and monthly green e-statements. My Green Free Checking. Bank Pacific today. Because having you as our customer, that's our privilege.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Legends aren't born, they are made. And during our Jeep Celebration event at Cars Plus and Mighty, you'll receive up to $6,000 in accessories with the purchase of a new Jeep Wrangler, Motor Trend SUV of the Year. Customize your new Jeep to the way you want it. Or how about a new Jeep Grand Cherokee? Save up to $5,000. Or save up to $7,500 on a new Jeep Compass Sport. It's our Jeep Celebration event going on now at Cars Plus and Mighty. Cars Plus, driven by you. Accessory special cannot be combined with other offers. See dealer for details. What happened?
I don't know. What happened?
Oh, okay. I guess I turned my volume down too far. I noticed the phone rang during.
That was the real Tom.
Take me out to the ball game. Was that Jack Haddock calling in?
No, it wasn't. That was the real Tom. He was asking if the House, they vote for the impeachment. Then is it the Senate that carries it out or tries
the case? Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you remember about Jack Haddock, Real Joe Cruz?
He frequented Tall Tales all the time.
So he's a pretty good guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
We'll miss him.
Yeah, we'll miss him. I remember that he could play first base. He could play right field. He was a good hitter. He made some diving shoestring catches. He made some over-the-shoulder catches running as fast as he could. Yeah, he was quite a ball player, but now he's gone. But we'll keep looking for him, Real Joe Cruz. The legend of Jack Haddock. Okay, so going on from the Daily News to a real newspaper, the USA Today. USA Today didn't exactly hit it out of the park themselves, but at least they did it here on Guam. Give the new Guam Guard Adjutant General a chance to prove. They say herself, but I changed it. I edited it. Give the new Guam Adjutant General a chance to prove themselves.
Well done, sir.
Yeah. In a matter of a few months, Esther Agagi has sped through the ranks of the Guam National Guard leadership. On January 19, Governor Lou Leon Guerrero announced she had appointed Agagi, who at the time was a lieutenant colonel, to become the Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard. A few months later, Agagi hopped a few ranks higher, no, just one rank higher, to colonel. And then on Sunday to Major General of the Guam National Guard. The governor gave Agagi the 2-star general promotion on Sunday. The same day, Agagi officially started her job as the Adjutant General of the Guam Guard. Now, actually, she's the Adjutant General of Guam. The papers do this all the time. The director of the Department of Labor, no, director of labor, director of administration, adjutant general of Guam. Guam law states the governor can appoint to the position of adjutant general a federally recognized commissioned officer in the Army or Air Force or their reserve components in the grade of at least lieutenant colonel. This officer should be promotable based on Army or Air Force promotion regulations and policies at the time of appointment to a grade not to exceed lieutenant general, according to Guam law, under Title 10. Now, this is like Lincoln writing the Gettysburg Address while writing to Washington on the back of an envelope. Title 10, the sentence should read, this officer must be promotable based on Army promotion regulations and policies under Title 10 at the time of appointment. Guam law, it's not Title 10 of Guam law. Guys over there at the Post. Agee's major general designation is a notch below lieutenant general and a level above brigadier general. There have been hiccups along the way as it became public through Agee's path to getting legislative approval that Agee had to repay $26,494 in military housing allowance she wasn't authorized to receive, and a letter of reprimand from Major General Roderick Longuerero, who was Agee's boss and the Guard's adjutant general at the time. Now that Agee has officially taken the helm of the top Guam Guard leadership, well, she's taken the helm of the Guam Guard, not the leadership. It's time for the troops to give her a chance to It's time for the troops to give her a chance to prove herself. I got to go back and edit that now. It's time for the troops to give them a chance to prove themselves, right? Yeah. I ask for your continued trust, Agee said at the ceremony Sunday, marking the official start of her role as the 11th Adjutant General since the National Guard was established nearly 28 years ago. Governor Leon Guerrero stood by Agee through the ceremony surrounding the Adjutant General's record. Let me repeat that again. Governor Leon Guerrero stood by Agee through the stood by Agee through the controversy surrounding the Adjutant General's record. Here's a quote from the governor. What stood up in my mind is the fact that she is the first woman. Oh, wow. She is the first woman from Guam National Guard to graduate from the Army War College, the governor said. In her presentation, she talked about how her father raised her in a family of men. God, it's a miracle she ever recovered. The governor said she knows Agee will go beyond just doing the job. In her speech, Agee pledged her commitment to ensuring the welfare of the Guam Guard's soldiers, airmen, civilians, and your families. Well, okay, it's a feel-good story. It doesn't have much impact. It's not too much more than just a news story. Recast as an editorial. There's no punchline here. I guess if there's a call to action, it's a call to action to the soldiers and airmen in the Guard, saying that now that Agee has officially taken the helm of the top Guam Guard leadership, it's time for the troops to give her a chance to prove herself. I guess that would be the call to action. And my question is, can it be any other way? Do the troops have the ability to veto General Agege's appointment? I don't think so. So I'm going to stick with Mark's dictum here, Mark's dictate. Don't be handing out the blue star just for the sake of handing out the blue star if there isn't adequate editorial comment there. So I will recognize the Post, unlike the other paper, as generating its own editorial comment, but sorry, folks, not today. The good news is, though, that you didn't get an F-. Like the other Pacific Daily USA Today did. Okay, so that takes me to the card. I got about 19 more minutes here. And I got a few items on the card here. I start out, I've got burn versus burn. Yeah. If this doesn't burn you, nothing will. Or after I finish this, for sure you're going to feel the burn. And then I've got USCIS versus marijuana. That's the lead item on the card. USCIS versus marijuana. Burn versus burn. And then critical thinking versus liberty. Also, this is a takeoff on Michael Bavacqua and Howard Zinn versus the church, which I covered already, but it's more of the same stuff. It's been on the card for quite a while. I've just never been able to get down to it, but it's not a perishable item. The concepts involved, the quality of the monologue that you'll hear from Tall Tales will not diminish because the material has aged a little bit. In fact, it may even be like fine wine or cheese. A little aging improves the product. Okay, so let me start out with USCIS versus marijuana. I know a lot of our listeners here are pretty interested in the subject of marijuana. This came from a column in the Daily News called Immigration Matters, and it's written by Catherine Bejarano Camacho, a guest columnist in the Daily News. And if you look at Catherine's bio, Catherine Bejarano Camacho is a Filipino-American attorney raised on Guam and licensed to practice in Guam and California. She specializes in employment and family-based immigration law, corporate law, and family law. So she's an immigration lawyer. So here's how the column goes. It starts out, Mabuhay and Hafaday. Good start. On April 4, the governor signed Bill 32-35 as Public Law 35-5, effectively legalizing the recreational use of marijuana by adults on Guam. The Public Law 35-5, the Guam Cannabis Industry Act of 2019, allows persons 21 years of age or older to possess, use, display, transport, or use in the privacy of their own home as they're enjoying life. That wasn't in the article. I added that myself, Real Joe Cruz. 1 ounce of cannabis, 8 grams or less of cannabis concentrate, or any cannabis-infused product containing 800 milligrams or less of tetrahydrocannabinol. An individual 21 years of age or older can grow, quote, no more than 6 cannabis plants, with 3 or few being mature flowering plants. To promulgate rules and regulations for the enforcement of the Guam Cannabis Industry Act of 2019, the Cannabis Control Board was created. Part of the task of the board is to regulate, quote, the testing, purchase, sale, production, processing, and delivery of cannabis and cannabis products to be sold to customers by a retail cannabis store. Although the Cannabis Industry Act of 2019 decriminalizes the possession, use, transportation, and sale of marijuana on Guam, federal law. Yep, federal law. Now, I'm going to use the word federal here, although you know I hate the word, so as to avoid confusion. I'm not going to say national law, but that's what it is. Federal law still classifies marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance. Schedule I substances have no accepted medical use under the Controlled Substances Act. Understanding the conflict that exists between Guam law and federal law with respect to marijuana is important, especially for those who plan to apply for naturalization. Well, here's what that means, Real Joe Cruz. If you come to Guam as an immigrant with an immigrant visa, you can be admitted to Guam or the United States as a lawful permanent resident. 5 years later, you can apply for naturalization, which means you would become a citizen of the United States if you jump through all of the naturalization hoops. On April 19, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services issued a policy alert, and it reads, controlled substance dash related activity and good moral character determinations. Good moral character. The alert confirms that an applicant for naturalization must still comply with the federal regulations governing marijuana. An applicant for naturalization can still be found to be lacking in good moral character. Now remember, this isn't me saying this. I suppose that the Triple J Rangers out there say, why does Bob keep saying that? This is not me saying it. This is the law, guys. An applicant for naturalization can still be found to be lacking good moral character by possessing or distributing marijuana because it's still against federal law. Thus, the decriminalization by various states and jurisdictions of the cultivation, possession, distribution, and use of both medical and recreational marijuana doesn't sanction the use of marijuana, I repeat, doesn't sanction the use of marijuana by an applicant for naturalization. Additionally, one doesn't necessarily need to possess or use marijuana to be found to be lacking good moral character. An individual who, according to local or state law, is legitimately employed in a cannabis-related business could also be found to be lacking good moral character. Now, we all know that most of the folks out in our international radio listening audience are of good moral character, but I don't know if that would be enough to overcome that finding based on working in a cannabis store. An individual who, according to local or state law, is legitimately employed in a cannabis-related business could also be found to be lacking good moral character. This could result in a bar to successfully becoming a naturalized citizen. It's important to comply with both federal and state law, especially when one is seeking immigration benefits such as naturalization. That's it. So the USCIS right there. Of course, I guess for regular listeners of Tall Tales, the USCIS rule shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. If I've said it once, I've said it more than once. I don't see the wisdom in our enacting something that we know is violative of federal law, of people who take oaths to comply with federal law, deliberately thumbing their nose at it. Okay, well, we're coming down to the home stretch here. I've had enough marijuana, so I'm going to go to the burn next.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sweet and Smoky Steak and Guac Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take my ex-girlfriend, just checking in.
Aw.
Hey, David, it's me, just checking in. I'm doing great. Just got the new Sweet and Smoky Steak and Guac Signature Wrap from Subway. Creamy guacamole, smoky sweet Wajillo mesquite sauce, and double the tender steak. They just know what I want before I do. So, yeah, things are going pretty great for me. Subway, make it what you want. Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub. Okay, bye.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Well, here we are. That's a call to the post at Churchill Downs. Getting harder to win the Kentucky Derby than it used to be. It used to be that the fastest horse would win the Kentucky Derby. But like everything else in the 21st century, that isn't the way it works anymore. The horse that wins the Kentucky Derby has to be politically correct and not crowd other horses out of the way.
That's a big kerfuffle they're having right now.
That was a terrible kerfuffle. It's called the Kentucky kerfuffle. The worst kind of kerfuffle, yeah. Okay, so I've got Byrne versus Byrne, but I'm going to just take a minute here. I didn't get a whole lot of Facebook posts today. Maybe I offended the Methodists. Maybe that's why nobody posted. Well, it's a risk you take if you're the host of Tall Tales. Let's see, what do I got here? I got Nate Horn. Good afternoon, Bob. Great seeing you this morning. Well, I did run into Nate this morning, and I forgot to tell him, you know, how everybody is so interested in ancestry now. Well, I did a little digging into mine, and I found that, you know, like a great-grandmother or probably great-great-grandmother on my mother's side was a Horn. Yeah. And part of that, part of my family tree that came from Germany. So if my great-great-grandmother's name was Horn, the next time I see Nate, I should refer to him as, "Hey, primo." Magahet Leidzo. Okay, Primo, good to see you this morning. And then I've got Denise Legaspi. Good afternoon, Denise. Tom Tahaji with a big half a day. Ishmael Velez is here. He says he was listening on the road and didn't want to break the law and text while driving. Very considerate. Now he's on board. Denise, what's the latest on the CCU and them getting raises? Meaning the employees at CCU. Well, yesterday, Denise, I had an item on the card called Fred Astaire versus Tall Tales. And I mentioned that the CCU is having a meeting 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, no doubt to moot out Tall Tales. And what I'm expecting is that the chairman of the CCU, Joey Duenas, will do one of his Fred Astaire routines and try to tap dance around the issue of them breaking the law in their executive session and then breaking it again by not giving Kevin Kerrigan the minutes for that meeting. But we'll see how it goes. I'll keep you informed, Denise. Ishmael Velez, we all know that Mueller didn't submit only one copy of the report to Barr. These reports are serialized and filed for the record and held forever. Okay. Then Nate horns in and says, and how many Benghazi hearings were there, Tom? I guess that's what's that? That's the original Tom? The real, what's his name?
I think that's another Tom.
No.
Oh, that's the real Tom.
The real Tom, yeah. Okay, so Nate is commenting on the real Tom. Ishmael Velez says, Tom, the Russians were helping the Democrats. I think that's probably right. Joe Cruz. Now, this isn't you, real Joe Cruz. This is another Joe Cruz. What a waste of resources that Trump witch hunt was. Yeah, I agree. Ishmael Velez, our Tom, the real Tom, and Utility Tom, also known as Tom Toole. So the three Toms. I don't know what happened to Utility Tom today. I was kind of hoping he'd call in, but we didn't talk about castration, so I guess he didn't have anything to add to the program. Ishmael Velez, I'm certain age has something to do with being the first. First female adjutant general, maybe? Could be. I suppose if we wait long enough, there will be more. Maybe someday we'll get to the point where we don't even have to talk about whether a person was a male or a female. Okay, and then I've got Prudencio Mano. Heard Hawaii senator wants Guam Marines in Hawaii, likely just to sustain their faltering economy. Yeah, we want them here. And then here's Joe Cruz. But again, this is not you. This is another Joe Cruz. But this is the kind of thing that I could almost imagine you saying. Another Joe Cruz says, you can never have enough marijuana, Bob. Brad Hewitt, lack of respecting authority. And then he goes on to say, that horse was mean and hurt other horses' feelings. Well, no wonder they didn't give him that great big rose wreath. He hurt the other horses' feelings. Yeah, well, I'm glad you clarified that one for us. I think they did the right thing. You know, it's kind of like when I was talking to my liberal friend last May, and I said, what do you think about the Indianapolis 500? He said, I think they're innocent. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. I'll do Byrne versus Byrne tomorrow. See you tomorrow.